Welcome to our daily reflection for this Wednesday, June 10th. And today we again hear of Elijah battling with the false prophets of Baal. And he's outnumbered 450 to 1. And here I'd like to say God likes to stack the deck. Always. He's always tilting. It's never a fair competition. God stacks the deck against us. Yes, against his own people all the time. So God likes to stack the deck to make it really hard to show that when God's people are victorious and they persevere and they make it through, it's clearly not them, it's clearly God. And so God likes to show his hand, so to speak. And so this is classic, the way classically how God likes to work, right? And oftentimes I'm like, really, Lord, do you have to make it this hard? But yes, he does. Because he wants to show forth that he loves us in the end and he will take care of us. And it's not about us. And that's a beautiful thing. In fact, I think of the Psalm 16 is the Psalm for today, has a beautiful line where it says, those who worship other gods multiply their sorrows, right? And that's so true. If we make something God that's not God, all we're going to do is multiply our heartache. We're going to multiply our sorrow and our anxieties and our worries and our unhappiness. There's only one source for happiness, and that is God. And that's what the Lord wants to teach the people of Israel in the time of this great idolatry and abandonment of God. And he sends the prophet Elijah. They have 450 prophets of Baal versus one last prophet of God, right? That's how bad things are. And, for the showdown to prove who's really God, Elijah says, all right, get your prophets, gather all of Israel, and they'll offer a sacrifice, and I'll offer a sacrifice, and we'll see which sacrifice is acceptable to God. Fire will come down from heaven, and we'll see if fire consumes your sacrifice, or if fire comes down and consumes my sacrifice. And we'll see who is the true God. And of course, you know the story, the 450 prophets get their sacrifice, they call out, they shout out, they cut themselves, they do everything they can to invoke their God. And then Elijah mocks them, is like, he's not answering. Maybe he doesn't hear. Maybe you got to shout a little louder, right? And yet there is no answer. And that's the powerful word, because anah, which means to answer in Hebrew, is an important image. God is the God who hears and he answers. But ironically, what we see with the false prophets and their gods, there's no God to hear or to answer. Whereas with Elijah's sacrifice, he has them throw water on the wood and on the sacrifice, and he has them do it repeatedly to show that when it's consumed with fire, it is beyond the natural, that God has acted miraculously. Only God can do what God can do. And that's what Elijah shows. And then the people see Elijah's sacrifice in flames, and they shout out, and the crowd chants, like at a big sporting event. Think of a big stadium, and they're chanting, and the crowd's rocking, and they say, right, Yahweh is God, right? Yahweh is God. And that powerful chant, by the way, the Lord is God, right, is literally what Elijah's name means. Elijah, Jah is Yahweh. Eli means my God is Yahweh. And so when they say the Lord is God, they're chanting Elijah's name, right? So this is exactly Elijah the prophet's mission. And so we see that, and we see the true God acting, right? And this beautiful scene is to lead them to faith, right? And so we too are called to faith, and that means faithfulness. And this is where Jesus, like Elijah, talks about the least of these commandments matter. And you have to not only teach the law of God, you have to obey. And Elijah epitomizes that. He was obedient and he taught the ways of Yahweh. And Jesus, like Elijah, will be obedient and teach the ways of God. And he's saying, look, don't think that I'm coming against the old covenant or against the law. I'm coming to fulfill it, right? So there's no contrast of the old covenant against the new covenant. When people see this dichotomy and they set one against the other, they're misunderstanding the nature of Jesus and of the law. The law is pointing to Jesus, and he's fulfilling it. And so you get this sense of continuity and that importance. And so today let's reflect on how we can be faithful to God's law, but also let's reflect on if we make anything God that's not God, we will only multiply our sorrows. Do you have peace of heart, or are you sorrowful? Maybe it's where you put your worship, your worth, and what you think is God. So let's put away the idols, as Elijah calls us today, and make God alone our God. May the Lord bless and keep you. The Augustine Institute Graduate School of Theology exists to help make Christ and his church better known and loved through the exercise of academic study. With St. Augustine as our patron, we focus on Scripture and the evangelization of culture, with a deep interior life for the individual person and a life of deep prayer. We have an incredible faculty that helps students go through a deep, deep study, but with personal guidance and mentorship. That's why our Graduate School of Theology has become the largest in the country, with over 500 students. Come and find out more through our distance education program that makes study very easy. And you could start with just one simple class and find out how much you love studying about God and your faith, and let that faith come alive in a deeper way. Find out more at augustine.edu, augustine.edu.